Hello guys, welcome to the Excoundrel 2.2a Wild Rift tier list. We're going to be covering a tier list for every single role, and it is based on numerous things. The way I construct my tier list is by A, playing in Diamond ELO and above, B, watching my friends play who are in Diamond ELO or above, C, looking at high ELO and also leaderboard match histories where possible to see the frequent champions that are popping up. And D, I'm up to D, right? Looking at pro play and the types of champions that they prioritize when we get a new patch out and whenever there's pro play. So a lot of this is basically based on those factors, mixed with my own personal experience, and also factoring in some of the nerfs and buffs that we had on the most recent patch. If you like this type of content, I do educational Wild Rift content, I do some gameplays, but I always try to make sure that I'm either explaining my build or explaining what I'm doing. And with my educational guide stuff, I'm always trying to help us become better players as a whole. So if you like that kind of stuff, feel free to like, subscribe, and drop me a comment, because if you do that, if you like, subscribe, and drop me a comment, you'll be entered into the April skin giveaway, which will be drawn on the 1st of May. So hopefully you guys want to get involved in that and get yourself a skin, so make sure you do that. And also thanks to G2A for sponsoring the channel. Reference link in the description below. So, tier list. Let's start off. You guys have seen me hovering over the Baron lane here for quite some time. Let's start off with the Baron lane. Okay, not a huge amount has changed from last patch when it comes to the Baron lane. The major changes I will talk about, though. I still believe Akali to be one of the best Baron laners in the meta, the best for solo carrying any ranked games. If you can master Akali, you can very quickly take over the games. Darius didn't get nerfed, still in a great spot. Malphite drops a little bit, because the reason that Malphite became so ridiculously OP was because that the Sunfire Cape build was super strong. Sunfire Cape build got nerfed slightly, but not enough for me to say that Malphite isn't a really strong top laner. He didn't get nerfed himself. He can still go the Liandry's into full tank build path if he wants to, and he still has a very, very good build path in general. So Malphite's still a great top laner that is good in all cases. In terms of between S and S+, Camille, Fiora, Gragas, they're all great picks. So Camille, Fiora, and Gragas, they're all incredible picks that can definitely carry games. The reason that Camille and Fiora are a little bit lower than Akali and Darius is they're slightly worse in team fights. Darius and Akali can still split push well, they can still 1v1 well, but they're also good in team fights. Camille and Fiora, slightly worse in team fights compared to Akali and Darius. Especially because Darius has access to so many movement speed items in this game. Gragas is still a great top laner, or Baron laner, and I still love playing Gragas, and I still believe him to be incredibly strong. I think Pantheon has moved up. I think the buffs that Pantheon have got have made him an S tier Baron laner. I don't think he's as good as the ones above him, the top 6, but I do think he's pretty strong. Olaf, Wukong, and Yasuo are all still very good picks. Yasuo is especially scary when in the hands of a one-trick. Anything with a red border means if this person is really good at this champion, it's going to feel like they're a much higher tier pick than they are. I believe Singed is kind of slept on still, and I still think Kennen is an okay pick. Like, Kennen's ultimate is still really good. People sleep on it. People actually do sleep on Kennen's ultimate. They think that because he got nerfed really hard after his release that he's bad. He's not bad. You just need to play a little bit safer in the laning phase, and you're still really good at dragon fights, and he still has a really good ultimate. So don't sleep on Kennen. Diana buffs did make her a better duelist, and that does make her a better Baron laner, although I do think she's better suited to mid. But she is still actually a relatively decent pick in the Baron lane. Then you have stuff like your Jarvan, your Jax, your Garen, and your Nasus. These are picks that will do well, and you know, these picks will do okay, but they're probably going to lose to higher tier picks, or they're not going to have as much impact in the game. Nasus can do, and Nasus can easily take over games, but if you're against a really good Baron laner, especially if they have a jungle duo, or even just, you know, people that are willing to dive you, Nasus can be very hard to play. I think the nerfs to Mundo really hurt him. I'm dropping him down to A/B. I think Mundo is going to struggle actually on this patch. I don't think Mundo's going to be in the best of places. Teemo, he's better than like the crap like Tryndamere, but he's not. He still sucks in team fights. Like Teemo can, in the hands of a really good Teemo player, feel very oppressive, but just versus any kind of hard CC, he doesn't provide any utility to a team. And if people just use their sweepers properly, that you shouldn't be getting caught by too many mushrooms. But you know, Teemo can take over 1v1 matchups really easily, and he is still a pick that could be okay in games, and one-trick Teemo players are scary, but, you know, at the end of the day, it's still Teemo, and he's still weak to hard CC, he's still weak in team fights, and is very lackluster compared to some of the other picks on this tier list. So that's the Baron lane. I hope it made sense to you. Let's move on to the mid lane. Just kidding, I totally meant the jungle. My bad. Okay, jungle. Again, not a huge shift from last patch. There are a couple of changes, and I'm also predictively putting in the Rammus pick because I think it is important to kind of include Rammus and where I think he might go. I'll obviously update this for when like Rammus is actually in the game, but I'm just basing this on what I think Rammus is going to feel like when the game puts him in. So I think Lee Sin and Evelynn still the best solo queue junglers out there. Lee Sin beats most of the junglers if you play him well. And Evelynn is absolutely nutty in solo queue. Like, just ask Assassin Dave. He knows. Evelynn is really like turbo broken in solo queue. But like, I actually watched Dave talk a little bit about Lee Sin, and while I partly agree with his analysis, I think a good Lee Sin player will take over a game. Like, a good Lee Sin player can abuse most of the other junglers that you see below him. Just in early duels or invades or setting up ganks, he's really good at dives. He's got a great level 5, which, you know, you can power farm to level 5 in the jungle. Getting level 5 in the jungle so quickly is insanely broken, by the way. I wish Riot would do something about that. They need to nerf jungle experience again, because there are so many times where the jungle is level 5 and your bot lane's just about to hit level 4 and there's nothing you can do about it because the ultimates are just so insanely influential. Anyway, rant over. I moved Jarvan up a little bit because I think people are starting to play him more. They're starting to see the value of Jarvan. He's got a very, very influential ultimate in team fights. You can play him damage or tank. So I think people are starting to see the value in Jarvan, and he's starting to gain a little bit of popularity. Vi got nerfed. I was going to move her up, but she got slightly nerfed on this patch. So I think I'm going to keep her on the same tier as the Wukongs, the Olafs, and the Shyvanas, who I've moved down. Shyvana got nerfed again pretty heavily, actually, on the last patch. So I don't think it makes Shyvana unplayable. Definitely not the same tier as like the Jaxes. Shyvana's still a good jungler, but it definitely will hurt her compared to some of the top tier picks. I've moved Pantheon up slightly. I don't think Pantheon is as good in the jungle as he is in the Baron lane, and although I think the early buffs to his like early stats and his Q damage or his first ability damage is good for him, I don't think it suddenly makes him a turbo broken jungler compared to some of the other ones. But I think he is good. I think he's on the verge of being like an S tier jungler. I also think Diana's jungle has got a lot better because of her clear speed changes. Basically, now every time you cast an ability, you get increased attack speeds, which it massively increases her clear speed. So I think Diana is a very viable jungler on this patch. I think Rammus is going to be like the just about the Amumu tier because he's actually considered a lot worse on League PC. If this was League PC, I think you'd probably drop Rammus down a few tiers here. But because Wild Rift is quite easy to clear the jungle, and it's very gank heavy. Like, there isn't really a farming jungle meta in Wild Rift. It's very gank heavy. Towers don't deal that much damage. I think Rammus is going to be a pretty solid jungler. Like, he is really influential at picking off individual carries as well. So a lot of Wild Rift right now is focused around like hyper carries. So either like a hyper carry mid laner or a really hyper carry type of assassin. So like, for instance, Rammus is good at taunting Katarina in fights. He can taunt Akali. He can flash taunt Ziggs, flash taunt a Jinx or a backline AD carry. And now his ultimate allows him to jump and gap close. I think Rammus will be good. I don't think he'll be insanely broken. I still think he has a relatively weak early game, but I do think he'll be good. So he may go up, he may go down. I'm predicting him to be somewhere around that Pantheon and Mumu level that I've put here. Below that, you know, people like Gragas, Xin Jax, and I still think Mundo is an okay jungler, just not... I put him as sleeper OP and moved... he was up a little bit further up the list last time. I don't think he's sleeper OP anymore. I think they really have just come down on him because he was just OP. Darius and Camille. I've seen Camille played in pro play. I'm not entirely convinced by it, but it is a jungler that can do okay, so I've got to include her. And then obviously we've got our Tryndamere and Master Yi. But really, the meta still dominated quite heavily by Lee Sin and Evelyn. But if you're not a Lee Sin or Evelyn player, do consider picking up Jarvan, because I think he's a very, very solid jungler that is quite easy to play and very easy to have influence with in team fights. Okay, now we do the mid lane. Whoa, what's this? Galio still S+? I think Galio still is S+. I genuinely believed, even despite the nerfs. One of the things that a friend of mine, it's Stuart, said to me that I think really rang true about Galio is that actually the scaling damage on his Q wasn't a problem. Like the max health damage on his Q wasn't a problem. The taunt damage scaling wasn't a problem. The problem was the initial damage on his first ability. When he actually hits, that initial circle damage was the thing that was hurting a lot. And that's what's kind of turbo broken. So I still think Galio is a very, very strong mid laner. Despite the nerfs, he still has incredible CC. His initial damage is still really good. Even with the charge range being reduced by 13% or so, I still think he's an incredibly strong mid laner. I also think he's an incredibly strong support. I still think Galio is just a good pick in general. I might be overstating that a little. Maybe he's not as good as I'm kind of making out here, but I do genuinely still believe Galio is incredibly strong, and I will still play Galio mid a lot. I still think Ziggs is super strong. I've seen it a lot in pro play, and it has just been devastating. And Katarina didn't get any nerfs, so why would I move her anywhere else? Because she's still good. I've brought Orianna down. The reason I brought Orianna down, and listen to my reasoning on this, because even though I do believe Orianna still to be an incredibly good and strong pick, if I had the choice between Orianna and Ziggs, I'd probably pick Ziggs. So if I'm choosing between a control mage type pick in the mid lane, I'm more than likely going to pick Ziggs because I think he's just better right now. And so therefore I think, well, should I just bring Orianna down slightly? Because I would probably pick Ziggs if I was going to pick Orianna. And that's why I made that decision. I've moved Diana to S/S+. Diana's rework, I think, has made her very strong. Has it made her absolutely giga turbo broken like Katarina? No, I don't think it has. If anything, I think Katarina just does what Diana does, but better, and has more mobility, and has resets in fights. Diana's ultimate is super strong. The scaling increases on it was super nice, and I think in general, Diana is a really good pick, but I don't think she's absolutely busted. I just think she's really good. So, Diana, you should definitely go and pick her, because she is strong. But I think like Katarina is just a better version of her still, and I don't think the buffs made her like turbo busted. I think they've actually put her into a good place, but she's not turbo busted in my opinion. Corki's still great. Like even with the package nerf, cooldown it's not made that much difference. In terms of Gragas getting back into S, I was convinced by Chuli. I do think Gragas is being underutilized in the mid lane, and I think Gragas is back to being a pretty solid one. I've moved Seraphine up massively. Like I have whacked Seraphine up my tier list because she's being played loads in pro play right now in the mid lane. I think she's a bit sleeper. I think Seraphine is definitely a sleeper mid lane pick. And I'm convinced by what I'm seeing in pro play for her to be a strong pickup. The thing about Seraphine, though, is she's quite hard to play. And she's bad into quite a few matchups. So you have to play her for the team mostly. But if you do get through the laning phase, like she's got a lot of damage, she's got incredible teamfight potential. I think Seraphine could be a little sleeper. And we are seeing a lot of pro players pick up Seraphine in the mid lane, in the Icon series as well. And in League PC, Seraphine is like permanently banned or picked because she's that good in the mid lane. And I just wonder if people in Wild Rift are kind of latching onto that and starting to use her more in the mid lane in that sense. But other than that, there weren't that many changes. I've moved Annie down slightly. I still think Annie is a solid solo queue pick. I do genuinely believe Annie, because she's super easy to play. Hextech belt into bear. Like, you're going to get some kills. You're going to get some teamfights started off. I used to rate her really, really poorly. Like, I used to rate Annie very poorly, but I do genuinely think she's better than I used to rate her. I think she's a solid mid lane pick. Very, very solid, especially if you just want to climb consistently or you're not very good at mid lane. Annie is your girl. You pick her, you slap people with bears, you get some kills. Okay, let's talk about the AD carries now. And in general, I still think the two best AD carries in the meta are Xayah and Kai'Sa. Kai'Sa has been seeing a little bit more priority than Xayah in general. I think because she has that mobility to jump to the backline, she works in different comps. She can go in a dive comp. She can be played front to back. Zyra I still think is incredible, but I do think that you have to be more of a specialist with Zyra to really unlock her full potential. Someone like It's Stewart is a great Zyra player to watch because he really knows how to play and balance her feathers correctly. Not everybody can do that. So, but I still think Zyra is just like stats-wise one of the best AD carries in the meta still. I think Ezreal is then super strong. Like I think because of the attack speed changes, I still think Ezreal is a very, very high tier pick. And I think people are starting to pick up Ezreal more frequently now and seeing again that he's still super powerful. I then think Jinx is the next best, but she is a little situational compared to the others. Like you do need to have her in the right comp with the right type of support. Beyond that, you have a couple of or 4 AD carries that I think are solid, like Draven, but he's really scary if he's a one trick. Draven can feel like an S+ AD carry if he's in the hands of a really good Draven player. I think Jin's good. I think Miss Fortune's decent. I've moved her down from where she was because she's just not getting picked that much, and she's kind of fell off in priority. And then Corki. Why is Corki, like a lot of people rate Corki really highly. Why have I put Corki lower than maybe some other tier lists might have done? Well, the reason being is there aren't that many great like AD mid laners right now. And especially because like if you're going to take a Corki bot, you can't really like double up on high AP damage sources, and because there aren't really many good AD mid laners right now, and like AD top laners sometimes like they are more split push focused, maybe not like massive AoE damage focused like marksman can be. I think that you know, Corki is more of a specific pick when you have a setup that requires more magic damage rather than just being an outright good AD carry. That's why I've put him down there as well. Like, if there were more really good AD mid laners in the meta, then Corki, I think, would be like really high priority. But you got to remember that if people are just picking like Ziggs, Diana, Orianna, etc., then you're going to have, if you put Corki bot, you're just going to have loads of AP damage on your team. And that's not always a good thing. I think Varus is still being slept on a little bit. I think Ashe is decent. I've put Ziggs in because I've seen some Ziggs AD carry in pro play, and it's actually really solid. Vayne's decent, again, really good in the hands of a one trick. I don't think the Tristana buffs have made her any better. And then obviously Yasuo, but requires like a very specific comp and a really good player to make it work. And Twisted Fate's a bad AD carry, so don't play him. Okay, let's take a look at the support tier list. And honestly, very little has changed. And the reason very little has changed is because even with the nerfs to Alistar on the last 2 patches, they didn't nerf the part of the kit that makes Alistar good. What makes Alistar good is his ultimate damage reduction. The reason Alistar is really strong in Wild Rift is you can jump into a fight, hit your ultimate, take no damage, run at the enemy carries, and because you have Trample activated, they have to respect you. Like, they can't ignore you, so they get zoned away from the fight. So Alistar by himself can single-handedly zone away like 1 or 2 carries on the enemy team and allow your team some space to actually do some work. That's why Alistar's strong. And yeah, okay, a lot of the time he'll die for it. But if you zone the enemy carries away and your carries clean up the fight and they're left by themselves, Alistar's done his job, and that's the reason he's good. And then when Alistar's good, Janna's going to be good because Janna's the immediate, like, obvious counter into Alistar. I think Galio support is a really, really solid choice, as is Braum. So Galio and Braum, I mean, basically Galio's just moved up to join Braum. S tier is the same with Leona, Rakan, and I do believe Nami's still being slept on. I'm not seeing a lot of people play her still, but I do believe her to be an incredibly strong enchanter support. Seraphine and Lulu, both incredibly good. Pantheon, I don't think Pantheon has got like significantly better because of the changes in his support. But I think he's still solid. Blitzcrank hasn't really changed. Honestly, those buffs didn't really help him. They're not going to make him any better than where he was. But honestly, people have started talking about Rammus support. Rammus is going to be a bad support. And let me tell you why. The reason Galio can do what he does in support role is because he has an instantaneous gap closer very early on in his kit with like AoE CC, and he has a lot of damage and a lot of poke. Like, he's just got everything that a support needs to be good. Rammus has literally got, I roll at you, and it's really obvious when he does it, and I have to get really close to you to taunt you, and I can taunt one person. He's not a good support, honestly, and he won't be a good support. Maybe post level 5, you'll see Rammus be like potentially good. And I hate supports that need level 5 to be good, which is why he's in the Malphite tier. Like, supports that need level 5 to be good should not be support, because you miss 5-6 minutes of the game where you can't do anything and you just, like, you're inting your AD carry. So, like, Rammus does not have good enough gap closing capabilities, easy enough a hard CC to apply, and he literally doesn't provide anything else to the game. Plus, he needs gold to actually get good in the late game. He's just not going to be a good support. So, yeah, I don't think Rammus is going to be a good support whatsoever. His kit just isn't lined up for it. But other than that, like, you're still picking the same things you were picking last patch, really. Nothing much massively changed in the support role. Right, that was the tier list, guys. I hope you enjoyed it. If you did, please feel free to like, subscribe, and hit the bell, and enjoy the relaxing music at the end.